Hey everybody, welcome back to Drive On. I'm your host, Scott Deluzio, and today I have a special episode for you. It's not just any episode, it marks a significant milestone for us here at the Drive On podcast. We're celebrating our 400th episode, and coincidentally, it lands on one of the most cherished holidays in the United States, Independence Day. As we gather with family and friends to celebrate the 4th of July with fireworks lighting up the sky, barbecues sizzling, and parades marching down the streets, it's important to pause and reflect on this day, what this day truly signifies. It's a day that commemorates bravery, sacrifice, and the enduring spirit of freedom that defines our nation. And in today's episode, we're doing just that, but with a special twist. Instead of our usual format of interviews and discussions, we're taking a deep dive into the heart of what Independence Day is all about. We'll explore the historical context that led to the American Revolution, the drafting and significance of the Declaration of Independence, key military battles that shaped our nation's fight for freedom, and what life was like in the newly formed United States. This episode is a departure from the norm, a monologue that I hope will not only educate, but also inspire and ignite a sense of patriotism in each of us. But why is this important, especially for us in the military community? It's because the values and principles that we fought for during the American Revolution echo the same ideals that service members and veterans and their families hold dear. The quest for freedom, the resilience in the face of adversity, and the unwavering commitment to serving a cause greater than oneself, these are the threads that weave through the fabric of our nation's history and the stories we share here on Drive On. As we embark on this journey through time, I invite you to reflect on the sacrifices made by generations before us, the freedoms we enjoy today because of their bravery, and the continued service of our military members and their families. This episode is a tribute to the spirit of Independence Day and an homage to our 400th episode milestone. It's a celebration of where we've come from, the challenges we've overcome, and the unwavering hope that guides us into the future. So, without further ado, let's dive into the rich tapestry of our nation's history and unravel the story of Independence Day and rediscover the values that make the United States a beacon of freedom around the world. Let's turn our attention to the document at the heart of 4th of July, the Declaration of Independence. We'll read through key excerpts and explore what these words meant in 1776 and, crucially, what they mean for us today. So let's first examine the opening of the Declaration of Independence, a passage that has resonated through the centuries. It says, "We hold these truths to be self evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." This opening sentence is one of the most famous in American history and lays the philosophical foundation of the Declaration. It introduces the idea that certain truths about human rights are obvious and universal. The notion that all men are created equal was revolutionary at the time, challenging the existing social hierarchies and the things that justified monarchies and aristocracies. It also introduced the concept that legitimate governments must protect these rights, primarily life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, next, let's look at the core argument for independence, which lays out why the colonies felt compelled to establish their own governance. It says that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. And here, the authors of the Declaration of Independence articulates the Enlightenment principle that governments exist to protect the rights of the people, and their power is legitimate only if it comes from the consent of those who are governed. This was a direct challenge to the divine right of kings, which held that monarchs derived their authority from God, not from the people. This part justified the colony's separation from Britain as a necessary action when the British government failed to protect these rights and did not govern by the people's consent. Now, moving on, the Declaration outlines specific grievances against the British Crown. Let's take a look into some of these complaints to understand the reasons behind the call for independence. It says, the history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyrant over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. This part of the declaration continues by listing 27 specific grievances against King George III to justify why the colonies were seeking independence. By detailing the king's actions, such as his refusal to approve laws which were beneficial for the colonies, the document frames the revolution as a reluctant but necessary response to tyranny. This list helped rally domestic support for the revolution and aimed to persuade foreign governments to recognize and support the new nation. Finally, we come to the conclusion of the Declaration of Independence, where the colonies boldly declare their new status. Let's see how this commitment was articulated in pledge and the pledge they made to each other. It says, that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states. It goes on to say, and for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. This conclusion serves as the legal declaration that the colonies are sovereign states no longer under British rule. This powerful ending is also a pledge among the signers who risk their lives and fortunes in support of this declaration. It underscores the seriousness and the sacrifices involved in declaring independence, binding the signers in a solemn commitment to the cause of liberty. So, having explored the foundational words and ideals of the Declaration of Independence, let's now take a look at the historical context that set the stage for these revolutionary ideas. We'll examine the events, figures, and forces that shaped the drive for American independence and how they collectively influenced the creation of this pivotal document. As we look into the historical context that paved the way for the American Revolution, it's crucial to start with the political climate of the time. This period leading up to the 1770s was marked by escalating tensions between the 13 colonies in Great Britain, a relationship strained by power struggles, governance, and the quest for representation. The roots of discontent can be traced back to the end of the French and Indian War in 1763. The victorious yet financially drained British Empire looked to the colonies to help repay the war debt. The British Parliament, asserting its authority, began to impose a series of taxes and laws on the colonies, marking the beginning of a significant shift in colonial attitudes towards British rule. The Stamp Act was one of the first major points of contention. It required colonists to purchase a British government stamp for every piece of paper they used, including newspapers, contracts, and licenses, and things like that. This act was not merely a financial burden, but a glaring symbol of British overreach, igniting a firestorm of protest across the colonies. The cry of no taxation without representation became a rallying call, capturing the colonists' demand for a say in the legislative process that directly affected their lives. The situation further deteriorated with the introduction of the Townshend Acts. It imposed duties on imported goods like glass, tea, and paper. These acts not only hurt the colonial economy, but also deepened the resentment towards British interference in colonial affairs. The acts led to widespread boycotts of British goods, a form of protest that unified the colonies in a shared struggle for autonomy. The British response to colonial dissent was often punitive, further alienating the colonists. The Boston Massacre, where British soldiers killed five colonial protesters, and the subsequent harsh measures like the Intolerable Acts, including the closing of Boston Harbor, were perceived not just as acts of tyranny, but as direct assaults on the liberties of the colonists. In this charged atmosphere, the seeds of revolution were sown. The First Continental Congress convened in 1774 and was a gathering of colonial leaders that marked a united colonial stand against British oppression. This assembly was not yet a call for independence, but a collective demand for the restoration of rights perceived to be infringed upon British policies. Through these escalating conflicts, the political climate between the 13 colonies and Great Britain became a catalyst for change. It was in this environment of political turmoil and growing discontent that the American Revolution found its footing. A desire for self governance, representation, and freedom from British rule became the driving forces behind the revolutionary movement, setting the stage for the birth of a new nation founded on the principles of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The political climate of the time, characterized by these moments of conflict and resistance, illustrates not just a struggle for independence, but a transformative period in history that redefined governance and laid the groundwork for the ideals the United States holds dear. The social climate of the 13 colonies plays an important role in understanding the forces that drove the push for independence. This period was characterized by a growing sense of unity and identity among the colonists, driven by shared grievances and a collective vision for a future free from British control. The social fabric of the colonies during the mid to late 18th century was diverse, consisting of people from various backgrounds, including English settlers, Native Americans, other Europeans, and those from other parts of the world. Despite this diversity, or perhaps because of the challenges it presented, the colonies began to see themselves less as British subjects and more as a distinct community with shared interests and goals. Print culture was instrumental in shaping public opinion and fostering a shared identity among the colonists. Newspapers, pamphlets, and books circulated widely, discussing the issues of the day and critiquing British policies. The works of Enlightenment thinkers such as John Locke, who advocated ideas of natural rights and government by consent, were particularly influential. These ideas resonated with the colonists' experiences of British rule, fueling a philosophical underpinning for rebellion. Religion also played a significant role in the social climate leading up to the revolution. The Great Awakening, a series of religious revivals across the colonies, emphasized individual piety and a personal relationship with God. It challenged the authority of established churches and, by extension, society's hierarchical and authoritarian structures, including British rule. This movement contributed to the burgeoning sense of individual rights and collective destiny that underpinned the revolutionary spirit. Social clubs and organizations like the Sons of Liberty emerged as forums for political discussion and action. These groups organized protests such as the Boston Tea Party and mobilized public opinion against British acts, further knitting the colonies together in a shared cause. The conditions and laws imposed by the British also fostered a unique social dynamic in the colonies. For instance, the Quartering Act, which required colonists to house British soldiers, infringed not just on economic resources, but on the personal lives and liberties of the colonists, creating a palpable sense of intrusion and oppression. As tensions with Britain escalated, these social bonds and shared grievances culminated in a collective colonial identity focused on liberty, rights, and self governance. This growing sense of American identity was key in uniting the diverse populations of the colonies against a common enemy and framing the struggle for independence as not just a political or economic conflict, but a deeply personal quest for freedom and community. The social climate of the 13 colonies, with its emphasis on shared values, Enlightenment ideals, and a growing sense of communal identity, was a vital force in the American Revolution. It transformed a scattered group of colonies into a unified front poised to challenge the mightiest empire of the era for their right to self determination. The dialogue on the social dynamics within the colonies leads us to the economic factors that further fueled the desire for independence. On the eve of the revolution, the economic climate of the 13 colonies was marked by a complex relationship between regulatory impositions by Britain and a growing entrepreneurial spirit within the colonies. This tension between external control and internal growth catalyzed a colonial push towards self reliance and economic sovereignty. British policies sought to bind the colonial economy to the motherland, dictating that the colonies could only trade with Britain and transport goods on British ships. These restrictions were designed to benefit the British economy at the expense of colonial prosperity. Acts such as the Navigation Acts not only limited economic growth, but also instilled a sense of economic exploitation among the colonists. The resentment was not merely about the financial burden, but also about denying the colonists' right to economic self determination. The Stamp Act and the Townshend Acts, which imposed direct taxes on the colonies, were seen as a egregious example of Britain's disregard for the economic well being of the colonies. The colonial response, including widespread boycotts of British goods, not only demonstrated the financial impact the colonies could have on Britain, but also highlighted the colonies' growing sense of economic identity and capability. Moreover, the colonial economy was diversifying. Agriculture was the backbone, but manufacturing and trade were on the rise, fostering a class of merchants and entrepreneurs who, under British restrictions, were, quite frankly, restricted. These economic actors saw independence as a pathway to unshackled economic growth and innovation. The economic grievances against British policies intertwined with broader desires for political and social autonomy, contributing to the revolutionary zeal. The Tea Act, which led to the iconic Boston Tea Party, vividly illustrates the economic tensions at play. Supposedly a relief measure for the financially troubled British East India Company, the act granted it a tea monopoly in the colonies. This not only undercut colonial merchants, but also symbolized the arbitrary power Britain wielded over colonial affairs. The destruction of the tea was a direct protest against this economic stranglehold and an assertion of the colony's right to economic self governance. And as we transition from examining the economic climate to exploring the key figures of the revolution, it's clear that the push for independence was as much about securing economic freedom as it was about political and social liberation. The economic grievances and aspirations of the colonies provided a critical backdrop against which the calls for independence gained momentum, weaving into the broader revolutionary movement. This collective desire for independence or political and social liberation found its voice and direction through a group of remarkable individuals whose actions and ideals became the driving force behind the American Revolution. These key figures, with their diverse backgrounds and contributions, played important roles in shaping the course of American history. George Washington stands as a towering figure in this period, not just for his military leadership of the Continental Army, but for his moral authority and unwavering commitment to the American cause. His leadership in battles and his ability to maintain the morale and cohesion of his troops under dire conditions were instrumental in the eventual success of the revolutionary effort. Thomas Jefferson, the principal author of the Declaration of Independence, brought his eloquent pen to the revolutionary cause. His ability to articulate the colony's grievances and aspirations for freedom in such a compelling manner helped to unify the colonies and provided a philosophical foundation for the new nation. Jefferson's words, "We hold these truths to be self evident, that all men are created equal," continue to resonate as a defining statement of American values. And with his diplomatic acumen, Benjamin Franklin played a crucial role in securing French support for the American Revolution. Franklin's charm, wit, and intelligence made him an effective ambassador, and his success in forming an alliance with France provided essential military support and financial aid that were key to the colonial victory. John Adams, a passionate advocate for independence, was a central figure in the debates leading up to the Declaration of Independence. His unwavering support for the cause, both in the Continental Congress and as a diplomat in Europe, helped to steer the colonies through the tumultuous years of the Revolution and beyond. Alexander Hamilton, though younger than many of his contemporaries, made significant contributions as an assistant to Washington and as an articulate advocate for constitutional government. His vision for a robust federal government and his role in drafting the Constitution were pivotal in shaping the political framework of the new nation. These individuals, among others, were not just leaders, but symbols of their revolutionary ideals. Their courage, intelligence, and dedication to the cause of liberty and justice helped to forge a new identity for the American colonies and laid the groundwork for the United States of America. Their legacies, encapsulated in documents like the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, continue to influence the nation's path. In the background of the American Revolution, these key figures stand out not merely as architects of a new nation, but as embodiments of the values and aspirations that continue to define the American spirit. Their contributions remind us that the foundation of the United States was built on the principles of freedom, equality, and the unwavering belief in the rights of the individual. The narrative of the American Revolution is punctuated by a series of significant events that not only propelled the colonies towards independence, but also solidified their unity and resolve. These moments, fraught with tension and imbued with a sense of destiny, underscored the colonists' determination to establish a nation grounded in the principles of freedom and self governance. The Boston Tea Party stands as a vivid act of defiance against British authority. In response to the Tea Act, which many colonists saw as another example of taxation tyranny, a group of patriots disguised as Indians boarded a British ship and dumped an entire shipment of tea into the Boston harbor. This bold statement of protest against the British policy of taxation without representation sent shockwaves through both the colonies and Britain, illustrating the depth of colonial resistance and marking a turning point in the march towards revolution. Following the Boston Tea Party, the British government enacted the Coercive Acts, known in America as the Intolerable Acts. These laws were intended to punish Massachusetts for the Tea Party and to serve as a warning to other colonies. Instead, they had the opposite effect, galvanizing the colonies against what they perceived as an existential threat to their liberties. The acts led directly to the convening of the First Continental Congress, where delegates from 12 of the 13 colonies met to coordinate a collective response to British policies. This assembly marked a critical step in the unification of the colonies and the formation of a collective American identity. The battles of Lexington and Concord in April of 1775 were the first military engagements of the American Revolutionary War. The British aimed to seize colonial military supplies and arrest revolution leaders, but were met with unexpected resistance. The quote unquote shot heard round the world famously described the first shot fired at Lexington, symbolized the irrevocable break between Britain and its American colonies, and these battles demonstrated the colonies' willingness to fight for their rights and marked the official start of the Revolutionary War. The Declaration of Independence, adopted on July 4th, 1776, was a revolutionary document in every sense. It not only declared the colony's independence from Britain, but also articulated the Enlightenment ideals that would form the backbone of the American Republic. This declaration was a bold assertion of the right of a people to self rule and laid out the grievances against King George III that justified the colony's break from British rule. The adoption of this document was a moment of immense political courage and vision, setting the newly declared nation on a path toward establishing a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. These significant events, from acts of direct protest to the philosophical Declaration of Independence, weave together the narrative of a people united in their quest for liberty. They reflect not only the strategic and ideological battles of the time, but also the enduring American values of freedom, resilience, and the pursuit of justice. As we move from the enthusiasm for revolution to the challenges of nation building, it becomes clear that the spirit that fueled these pivotal moments would be needed in the years to come as the newly formed United States embarked on the delicate task of creating a lasting republic. In the atmosphere of revolutionary thought and action, the drafting of the Declaration of Independence emerged as a definitive step towards the colony's formal separation from British rule. This task fell to a committee of five appointed by the Continental Congress, with Thomas Jefferson taking the lead as the primary author. The document they would produce in June of 1776 was to become not just a statement of intent, but a beacon of the foundational ideals of the new nation. Jefferson, along with his colleagues, John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Roger Sherman, and Robert R. Livingston, was charged with articulating the colony's reasons for declaring independence. The Declaration was to lay out a vision for a society based on the inherent rights of individuals and the legitimate powers of government derived from the consent of the governed. Jefferson drew heavily on Enlightenment ideals, emphasizing the natural rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness as unalienable gifts that no government could justifiably take away. The drafting process was a collaborative effort, with contributions from the committee members refining Jefferson's initial draft. Benjamin Franklin and John Adams, in particular, provided significant edits and suggestions, helping to polish the language and strengthen the document's arguments. The deliberations within the committee reflected a broader consensus among the colonies on the necessity of independence and the principles that should guide the new nation. When the Declaration was presented to the Continental Congress on July 2nd, 1776, it sparked intense debate. Some delegates were hesitant to break completely from Britain, while others argued for immediate action. Over the course of 2 days, the Congress meticulously reviewed the text, making further revisions. Despite these changes, Jefferson's eloquent preamble, with its profound statements on rights and governments, remained largely intact. a testament to the power of his words and the shared convictions of the delegates. The adoption of the Declaration of Independence on July 4th, 1776, marked the colony's official assertion of their status as a free and independent states. It was an act of unparalleled political courage, signaling not only a break from British authority, but also the colony's commitment to the principles of individual rights and self governance. Declaration signing was a unifying moment for the colonies, solidifying their collective identity and purpose in the face of British opposition. This document, with its bold claims on the rights of man and the nature of legitimate government, laid the philosophical groundwork for the new nation. It affirmed that the United States of America would stand as a constitutional republic where the rule of law, grounded in the Constitution and reflecting the will of the people, would guide the nation's governance. The Declaration of Independence remains a symbol of the enduring American ideals of liberty, equality, and the pursuit of happiness. Ideals that continue to inspire and challenge the nation to this day. With the Declaration of Independence drafted, a document that would chart the course of a new nation was set before the Continental Congress. This text not only justified the colony's separation from British rule, but also laid out the vision for a society grounded in the inherent rights of its people and the principles of self governance. The key components of the Declaration not only illustrated the colonists' grievances against the British monarchy, but also articulated a new philosophy of government that would become foundational to the United States. At the heart of the Declaration is the assertion that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, among these life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This powerful declaration was of natural rights was revolutionary, challenging the divine right of kings and asserting that the legitimacy of government stems from its protection of these fundamental rights, not from the hereditary rule or by force. The Declaration further suggests that governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. This principle of popular sovereignty was a radical departure from the monarchies of Europe, where the ruler's authority was often claimed by divine right or inheritance. In contrast, the new American Republic would be founded on the idea that the government's authority comes from the people it serves. A significant portion of the Declaration is dedicated to detailing the grievances against King George III and the British government. These complaints include imposing taxes without consent, depriving the colonists of trial by jury, dissolving representative bodies, maintaining standing armies in peacetime without the consent of the legislature, and cutting off trade with the rest of the world. These grievances were not merely a list of complaints, but a justification for rebellion, painting the British crown as a tyrant who had violated the fundamental principles of governance. The Declaration concludes with the colony's assertion that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, stating that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and perform all acts and things which independent states may rightfully do. This bold statement of sovereignty and independence was an outright rejection of British authority, setting the stage for the creation of a new government based on the ideals laid out in the document. The Declaration of Independence is more than a historical artifact, it's a living document that continues to influence the ideals and governance of the United States. Its emphasis on individual rights, the rule of law, and the principles of self governance through a constitutional republic have echoed through American history, guiding the nation through its challenges and inspiring its aspirations. The key components of the Declaration not only marked the birth of a new nation, but also articulated a vision of governance that remains a beacon of liberty and justice. The start of the Revolutionary War was marked not by grand declarations or formal battlegrounds, but by the sudden, violent clash of wills in the small towns of Lexington and Concord. These initial engagements, occurring on April 19th, 1775, would forever alter the course of American history, transforming a simmering rebellion into a full scale war for independence. In the pre dawn hours, British troops, known as Redcoats for their distinctive uniforms, marched from Boston with orders to seize colonial military stores in Concord, Massachusetts. Alerted to the British movements, the colonial militia, known as Minutemen, so named for their readiness to fight at a minute's notice, gathered to intercept them. The tense standoff in Lexington's town green sparked the first shots of the Revolutionary War, a chaotic skirmish that resulted in the deaths of 8 colonists. The British then pressed on to Concord, only to find that most of the munitions they sought had been moved. And as they began their return march to Boston, the British column was harassed by increasing numbers of colonial militiamen firing from behind stone walls and trees in a guerrilla style engagement. This running battle marked the beginning of armed resistance to British rule and underscored the colony's determination to fight for their rights. The significance of Lexington and Concord cannot be overstated. These battles demonstrated the colonists' willingness to stand up to the might of the British Empire, signaling a commitment to resist oppression through armed conflict if necessary. The news of the fighting spread rapidly, igniting a revolutionary fervor that swept through the 13 colonies. Men from all walks of life rallied to the cause, joining the growing Continental Army or their local militias, ready to defend their liberties at a moment's notice. This shot heard round the world, as Ralph Waldo Emerson later described the first gunfire at Lexington, resonated far beyond the immediate conflict. It marked the uh, irrevocable step from peaceful protest to armed rebellion, setting the colonies on a path towards independence. Though small in scale, the battles of Lexington and Concord were monumental in their impact, initiating the Revolutionary War and uniting the colonies in a common cause for freedom and self governance. In the aftermath, the siege of Boston would become the next significant military confrontation, laying the groundwork for the Continental Army's future engagements and George Washington's strategic leadership. The start of the war was a crucial moment, demonstrating the resolve and resilience of the American spirit and a testament to the courage of those who fought for a future they believed in, even against overwhelming odds. The Revolutionary War was made up of a number of battles, each with its own significance. However, some engagements stand out for their strategic impact and their role in shifting the momentum of the conflict. Among these, the Battle of Saratoga was a pivotal turning point, a victory that would dramatically alter the course of the war and the future of the American colonies. In the fall of 1777, the British devised a plan to divide the rebellious colonies along the Hudson River, isolating New England from the rest of the colonies. British General John Burgoyne led a formidable force southward from Canada, intending to link up with other British forces moving northward. However, the campaign faced difficulties from the start, including logistical challenges and stiff resistance from American forces. As the British troops advanced, they encountered a growing American army under the command of General Horatio Gates, whose actions on the battlefield would become legendary. The Americans fortified their positions around Saratoga, New York, preparing for the advancing British army. The confrontation unfolded in two significant engagements. the Battle of Freeman's Farm in September of 1777, and the Battle of Bemis Heights a few weeks later in October of 1777. The Americans demonstrated tactical skill and tenacity in both battles, effectively countering British maneuvers and inflicting heavy casualties. The fighting was intense and brutal, with both sides experiencing significant losses. The British troops, finding themselves surrounded and cut off from reinforcements, faced a dire situation. The British army, was weakened and having no prospect of linking up with other British forces, they decided to surrender on October 17th, 1777. This surrender marked a significant victory for the Continental Army and a turning point in the Revolutionary War. The victory at Saratoga had far reaching consequences. It served as a catalyst for France to enter the war on the side of the American colonies, providing crucial military support and aid. The French alliance was instrumental in turning the tide of the war, offering the Americans not just additional troops and supplies, but also a powerful naval presence. The Battle of Saratoga also boosted American morale, proving that the Continental Army could defeat British forces in a major engagement. It demonstrated the effectiveness of American strategy and the resilience of its troops, inspiring further support for the revolutionary cause. Furthermore, Saratoga showcased the importance of leadership and unity. The American victory was achieved through the combined efforts of various commanders and the courage of the soldiers under their command. It underscored the potential of the American forces when united in a common cause. In the broader scope of the Revolutionary War, the Battle of Saratoga stands as a testament to the American spirit of independence. It affirmed the colonies' resolve to fight for their rights and laid the groundwork for subsequent victories that would eventually secure American independence. Following the turning tide marked by the Battle of Saratoga, the Revolutionary War continued with various engagements, both large and small, across the colonies. Yet, as important as each battle was, none would prove as decisive as the Siege of Yorktown. This engagement, culminating in October 1781, would effectively bring the Revolutionary War to its conclusion, cementing the American quest for independence and setting the stage for the birth of a new nation. The Siege of Yorktown began in September 1781 as American and French forces, under the command of General George Washington and French General Rochambeau, respectively, made a daring and strategic maneuver. The Franco American alliance, bolstered by a critical naval victory by the French fleet under Admiral de Grasse in the Battle of the Chesapeake, moved to trap British General Lord Charles Cornwallis and his army on the Virginia Peninsula at Yorktown. Cornwallis had entrenched his forces in Yorktown, believing it to be a defensible position that would allow him to maintain communication with the British Navy. However, the unexpected arrival of the French fleet and the rapid movement of the Franco American armies left him isolated and vulnerable. The siege that ensued was a masterclass in 18th century warfare, with American and French forces systematically encircling the British, cutting off escape routes, and bombarding the enemy positions with artillery. Over several weeks, the British fortifications were steadily eroded under the relentless assault. Cornwallis, faced with dwindling supplies, mounting casualties, and no hope of reinforcement, recognized the futility of continuing the fight. On October 19th, 1781, he surrendered his army to Washington, marking the last major military action of the Revolutionary War. The surrender at Yorktown has had significant implications. It signaled to the world that the American colonies were capable of defeating the mighty British Empire, effectively ending British efforts to quell the rebellion. In Britain, political support for the war diminished sharply, leading to negotiations that would culminate in the signing of the Treaty of Paris in 1783. This treaty recognized the independence of the United States, establishing its borders and opening a new chapter in world history. The siege also underscored the importance of the Franco American alliance. Without French military support, both on land and at sea, the victory at Yorktown might not have been possible. This collaboration between nations, founded on a shared desire to challenge the British rule, was a critical factor in the American victory. Moreover, Yorktown stands as a testament to the leadership of George Washington and the perseverance of the Continental Army. Their ability to engage and defeat the superior British force under challenging conditions was a remarkable achievement that solidified Washington's legacy as a pivotal figure in American history. In the annals of the Revolutionary War, the Siege of Yorktown is remembered not just as the culminating battle, but as a defining moment when the dream of American independence turned into reality. It marked the end of colonial rule and the beginning of a new era of self determination and governance, laying the groundwork for the United States to emerge as a sovereign and united country. After the decisive victory at the Siege of Yorktown, the path to peace began in earnest, culminating in the signing of the Treaty of Paris on September 3rd, 1783. This treaty not only signified the end of the Revolutionary War, but also marked the recognition of the United States of America as an independent and sovereign nation by the British Crown. The negotiations and the treaty itself embodied the complexities and the diplomatic efforts required to conclude such a transformative conflict. The peace negotiations took place in Paris with Benjamin Franklin, John Jay, and John Adams representing the United States. These men brought not only their considerable diplomatic skills to the table, but also a clear vision of what was required for the new nation to secure its future. On the British side, David Hartley and Richard Oswald were tasked with negotiating terms that would end the hostilities and recognize the new political reality. The discussions were lengthy and complex, reflecting the profound implications of the war's outcome. Both sides had significant interests to protect, and the American negotiators were particularly focused on ensuring that the terms of independence were unequivocal and that the new nation's territorial rights were clearly defined. The Treaty of Paris contained several key provisions that would shape the future of the United States. The treaty formally recognized the United States of America as an independent and sovereign nation, free from British rule. It established the boundaries of the United States, granting the new nation significant territorial gains from the Atlantic coast to the Mississippi River and from the Great Lakes to the northern border of Florida. The treaty also granted the United States the right to navigate the Mississippi River, which was crucial for the westward expansion and economic development of the country. The treaty granted Americans rights to fish in Canadian waters, which was a significant economic concession. Both sides agreed to release prisoners of war, and the British agreed to withdraw all troops from American territory. However, the British retained control over certain strategic forts in the Lakes region for a period after the war, which remained a source of tension until it was resolved by other treaties down the line. The treaty addressed issues related to property and debts, promising restitution to loyalists who had lost property during the war and recognizing the validity of pre war debts owed to British collectors. The Treaty of Paris was a monumental achievement for the United States, signaling the international community's acceptance of the new nation on the world stage. It also set a precedent for diplomatic negotiations and the peaceful resolution of disputes, principles that would guide the young nation's foreign policy. The treaty's ratification by the Continental Congress in January 1784 marked the official end of the Revolutionary War and the beginning of a period of nation building. With independence secured and territorial boundaries established, the United States faced the daunting task of forging a unified national identity and government that would live up to the ideals fought for during the Revolution. With the ink dried on the Treaty of Paris, the United States of America embarked on an unprecedented experiment in governance and society. The cessation of hostilities and the recognition of American sovereignty opened a new chapter, one filled with optimism but also fraught with uncertainty. Life in the newly formed United States was a complex tapestry of hope, challenge, and the relentless pursuit of a collective identity and purpose. The euphoria of independence was quickly tempered by the realities of nation building. The young United States faced a multitude of challenges that threatened its stability and future prospects. These hurdles were not only external, but also internal, reflecting the profound complexities of creating a unified nation from the different colonies. The war had left the new nation in a precarious economic state. The cost of the conflict had been immense, burdening the United States with significant debt. Moreover, the absence of British trade, upon which the colonies had heavily relied, disrupted economic activities. The new government faced the daunting task of stabilizing the economy and creating a stable currency and fostering trade relations both domestically and internationally. The Articles of Confederation, the first governing document of the United States, proved inadequate in addressing these economic challenges. It granted the federal government limited power to regulate commerce or impose taxes, leading to financial instability and hampering efforts to pay off war debts. This economic fragility underscored the need for a stronger, more centralized government capable of managing the nation's fiscal affairs effectively. The victory in the Revolutionary War did not erase the profound political divisions within the American society. Debates raged over the balance of power between the federal government and the states, the representation of small versus large states, and the rights of individuals versus the authority of the state. These debates were not merely academic, but reflected deep seated regional, economic, and philosophical differences. The process of drafting and ratifying the Constitution highlighted these divisions. The intense debates between the Federalists, who advocated for a strong central government, and the Anti Federalists, who feared the concentration of power would lead to tyranny, underscored the diversity of thought and the challenges of forging a consensus on the governance of the new nation. Testing the resilience, ingenuity, and commitment of its people, these early trials would shape the character of the nation, forcing Americans to confront their ideals and aspirations against the harsh realities of creating a functioning society from the ground up. Amid the challenges confronting the newly formed United States, the nation also witnessed significant triumphs and achievements that not only underscored its resilience, but also illuminated the path toward a more stable and prosperous future. These accomplishments laid the groundwork for the United States to emerge as a cohesive, dynamic force on the global stage, reflecting the ideals and aspirations that fueled the fight for independence. Perhaps the most monumental achievement in the early years of the United States was the drafting and ratification of the Constitution, replacing the Articles of Confederation. This document was the result of intense debate and compromise at the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia. It created a stronger federal government with the flexibility to grow and adapt. The Constitution established a system of checks and balances among the executive, legislative, and judicial branches, ensuring that no single entity could dominate the new government, a bold experiment in self governance. The first 10 amendments, known as the Bill of Rights, were quickly added to guarantee individual liberties such as freedom of speech, press, and religion, as well as protections against governmental overreach. These amendments were crucial in securing the support of the anti federalists who feared that a strong central government might infringe on the rights of the states and the people. Under the leadership of figures such as Alexander Hamilton, the first Secretary of the Treasury, the United States began to address its economic challenges with innovative policies. Hamilton's financial plan, including the federal assumption of state debts, the establishment of a national bank, and the promotion of a diversified economy, laid the foundation for economic stability and growth. These measures helped establish the credit of the United States, making it possible to invest in infrastructure and development and encourage a spirit of entrepreneurship and innovation that would drive the nation's expansion. The United States also embarked on a path of territorial expansion that would dramatically increase its size and influence. The Louisiana Purchase in 1803 under President Thomas Jefferson doubled the nation's size, opening vast tracts of land to exploration and settlement. This acquisition, along with subsequent treaties and purchases, underscored the United States' growing assertiveness and its desire to secure its borders and resources. Diplomatically, the United States began to assert its place in the world, negotiating treaties that secured its trading rights and neutrality. The young nation navigated the complex geopolitics of Europe, maintaining its sovereignty while engaging in commerce that would fuel its economic engines. Despite the deep divisions and inequalities that persisted, the post revolutionary period was also marked by significant social and cultural developments. Movements advocating for the abolition of slavery, women's rights, and educational reform began to take root, sowing the seeds for future transformations. The proliferation of newspapers, books, and pamphlets fostered a vibrant public discourse, while the arts and sciences flourished, reflecting the diversity of American life. These triumphs and achievements of the early United States are a testament to the vision, determination, and resilience of its people. They navigated the uncertainties of nation building while uh, with a pioneering spirit, laying the foundations for a republic that would endure challenges and evolve over time, always striving to fulfill the ideals of liberty, equality, and democracy that were its birthright. In the aftermath of revolution and amidst the struggles and triumphs of building a new nation, the United States faced the challenge of forging a national identity. This task was daunting, given the vast differences in geography, culture, economy, and interests among the states. Yet it was through these very challenges that and the collective efforts to overcome them that the contours of a unique American identity began to emerge. The United States, from its inception, was a assortment of cultures, traditions, and beliefs. The influx of immigrants from Europe, the presence of Native American tribes and Africans through the slave trade, and the settlers of British descent all contributed to the nation's demographic makeup. This diversity, while occasionally a source of tension, also became a source of strength and innovation. The blend of ideas, practices, and values from different cultures enriched the American social fabric, contributing to a dynamic and evolving national character. At the heart of the emerging American identity were the principles enshrined in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. The ideals of liberty, individual rights, and self governance became pillars of the national ethos, influencing not only the political landscape, but also permeating the societal values. The belief in the possibility of change, the right to pursue one's destiny, and the importance of community and solidarity were all central to the American spirit. The challenges of the early years, ranging from external threats to internal disputes, tested these ideals but also reinforced the commitments to them. The process of negotiating the Constitution, the debates over the Bill of Rights, and the various conflicts and compromises that shaped the early republic all served to clarify and affirm the values that would define the nation. The concept of manifest destiny, though not formally articulated until the 19th century, captured the growing sense of American exceptionalism and the belief in the nation's destiny to expand and prosper. The westward expansion, fueled by the Louisiana Purchase and subsequent acquisitions, was driven by more than just the desire for land. It reflected a profound belief in the nation's mission and potential. It also inspired efforts towards reform and improvement, pushing the nation to confront its shortcomings and strive towards its ideals. The early symbols of the nation, from the flag to the national anthem, and the rituals of the new republic, such as elections and public debates, help solidify a sense of belonging and participation among its citizens. These symbols and practices became points of reference for what it meant to be American, embodying the values and struggles of the young nation. As the United States moved forward from its formative years, the evolving national identity would continue to be tested and reshaped by the trials and triumphs that lay ahead. Yet the foundational period following independence was crucial in establishing the principles, values, and aspirations that would guide the nation through its journey, fostering a sense of unity and purpose among its population. As the United States matured and navigated its way through the trials and triumphs of nation building, the significance of Independence Day as a national holiday evolved, embedding itself deeply into the fabric of American life. This evolution reflects not just a celebration of the historical act of declaring independence from British rule, but a multifaceted appreciation of the principles and struggles that have shaped the nation. Independence Day, observed annually on July 4th, is more than a commemoration of the Continental Congress's ab- adoption of the Declaration of Independence in 1776. It is a day filled with deep national significance, serving as a reminder of the courage, vision, and resolve of the founding fathers and the countless individuals who have fought to uphold the ideals of liberty and justice. Celebrating Independence Day is a reaffirmation of the enduring principles upon which the United States was founded and a reflection of the ongoing journey to realize those ideals fully. The origins of Independence Day celebrations trace back to the earliest years of the nation's history. The first anniversary of the Declaration of Independence in 1777 was marked by spontaneous celebrations in Philadelphia, including a 13-gun salute, parades, music, and the ringing of bells. These early observances set the precedent for annual celebrations, with various cities and towns across the new nation holding their own commemorative events. As a tradition of marking the day grew, so did the forms of celebration. Early Independence Day festivities were patriotic gatherings where citizens would come together to honor the nation's birth. Speeches and readings of the Declaration of Independence were common, serving as reminders of the struggles for independence and the principles at the heart of the new nation. Parades showcase the unity and strength of the communities, while public dinners, bonfires, and fireworks created a sense of camaraderie and joy. These celebrations were not merely festive occasions, but acts of civic pride and national identity. They reinforce the collective memory of the Revolutionary War and the victory over British rule, instilling a sense of shared heritage and purpose among the population. Over time, the celebration of Independence Day took on deeper layers of significance. As the United States expanded and faced new challenges, the 4th of July became a day not only to celebrate the nation's founding, but also to reflect on the sacrifices made to preserve and expand its freedoms. The holiday evolved to include not just patriotic displays, but also discussions and reflections on what it meant to be American. It became an occasion for recommitting to the ideals of liberty and democracy, recognizing that the pursuit of these principles is an ongoing effort. Independence Day celebrations became a unifying force, bringing together people to celebrate the nation's achievements and aspire towards a more perfect union. The day serves as a reminder that the ideals of the founding fathers continue to guide the nation even as it strives to overcome new challenges and live up to its founding principles. Today, Independence Day stands as one of the most cherished holidays in the United States, a time for Americans to come together and celebrate the nation's founding principles and achievements. The modern celebrations of the 4th of July blends historical traditions with contemporary expressions of patriotism, showcasing the enduring spirit of American independence. The tradition of fireworks, a staple of Independence Day since its earliest observances, continues to dazzle crowds across the nation. These spectacular displays lighting up the night sky in a multitude of colors serve as a vivid reminder of the revolutionary fervor that led to the nation's birth. Cities and towns, big and small, host fireworks shows, drawing communities together in shared wonder and celebration. Parades remain a central feature of the holiday, with floats, marching bands, military units, and community groups parading down main streets. These processions, often accompanied by patriotic music, flag waving, and the wearing of red, white, and blue, are a display of national pride and unity, reflecting the communal spirit of the holiday. Independence Day is also a time for picnics, barbecues, and family gatherings, where Americans celebrate in a more personal and intimate setting. These gatherings are a testament to the holiday's role in fostering community bonds and creating shared memories as people come together to enjoy the freedoms that the day commemorates. Public events, such as concerts, festivals, and historical reenactments, offer opportunities in education and entertainment, connecting Americans to their history in engaging in interactive ways. These events not only entertain, but also serve to remind the public of the struggles and triumphs that have defined the nation's journey. While Independence Day is a day of celebration, it is also a time for reflection on the principles of liberty, equality, and democracy that are the foundation of the United States. It serves as a annual occasion for Americans to consider the progress made towards realizing the ideals of the founding fathers and the work that remains to be done in pursuit of a more perfect union. Modern celebrations of Independence Day, with their blend of tradition and contemporary expression, underscore the holiday's significance as a time of national unity and affirmation of American values. They remind us of the resilience and strength of the United States, a nation continually striving to live up to its founding ideals. As we wrap up this special 400th episode of the Drive On podcast, reflecting on the significance of Independence Day and the journey of the United States from its tumultuous beginnings to its current standing as a beacon of liberty and justice, it's clear that the essence of this holiday transcends mere celebration. It is a day filled with the spirit of the American experiment, a testament to the resilience, courage, and unwavering pursuit of the ideals upon which this nation was founded. From the early struggles for recognition and survival through the trials of building a nation true to the principles of liberty and self governance, to the challenges and triumphs that have shaped its course, the story of the United States is one of constant evolution. It is a narrative marked by the collective efforts of its people to forge a more just and free society. Independence Day serves as a powerful reminder of the sacrifices made by the founders and the countless men and women who have fought to defend and advance the cause of freedom. It is a day to honor their legacy, to celebrate the progress achieved, and to recommit to the ideals that define the American spirit. This holiday, with its fireworks, parades, and gatherings, is a celebration of unity, a time when Americans from all backgrounds come together to honor their shared heritage and aspirations. As we mark this Independence Day and celebrate the milestone episode 400, let us also look forward with optimism and resolve. The journey of the United States is ongoing, a continual process of striving toward the fulfillment of its founding promises. The principles of liberty and justice remain guiding lights, urging us on the quest for a more perfect union. In this spirit, let us renew our commitment to the values that underpin the American experiment. Let us engage in constructive dialogue to overcome our differences and work together to address the challenges of our time. The legacy of Independence Day is not just to remember the past, but to inspire action in the present and hope for the future. As we draw this special 400th episode to a close, it's not just the history and significance of Independence Day that we celebrate, but also the journey of the Drive On podcast itself. Reaching this milestone is a testament to the resilience, engagement, and spirit of our listeners and everyone who has been a part of this journey. From the depths of history to the stories of service and sacrifice, we've explored the many facets that make up the fabric of military life and the broader American experience. And as significant as this 400th episode is, it also marks a beginning, not an end. There are many more stories to tell, lessons to learn, and conversations to have. So as we look forward to the future, let's continue to come together, episode by episode, to explore, reflect, and celebrate the ongoing journey of service. Thank you for joining me, Scott DeLuzio, on this special episode of the Drive On podcast as we celebrate our 400th episode and the Independence Day holiday. Let us move forward with pride in our hearts and a steadfast dedication to the ideals that make the United States a land of opportunity and a beacon of freedom to the world. Thanks for listening to the Drive On podcast. If you want to support the show, please check out Scott's book, Surviving Son, on Amazon. All of the sales from that book go directly back into this podcast and work to help veterans in need. You can also follow the Drive On podcast on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts.